What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more punk rock. And we're going back to Strung Out once more. And we're back with their album Another Day in Paradise, 1994, Fat Records. I did want to mention, I was talking to Paulie, and I was basically saying that, given that there's no real, best way to do this, just, go through the material and see what feels right. I was saying I'm probably going to go on to Suburban Teenage Wasteland Blues after this. Maybe even go through Twisted by Design, and at that point maybe we'll jump back and see how it all started with the skinny years before we got fat. So I suppose that is the plan from this point out. And we're going to listen to the next tune, which is, again, it's getting close to the end of Another Day in Paradise. It's the third to last tune, and that is Unclean. It's a concept that speaks to, being sullied or being sort of dirtied by something. Now, that could be in a literal sense, through, arduous labor, or perhaps, suffering through blows and injuries, and, perhaps being sort of unclean, and that one has had to engage in actions that are perhaps dubious, by your own ethical standards. It could be also, sort of unclean, or purity is also a concept that's used in a lot of different religions. The idea of whether it's through ablution, which is cleansing, or whether it's through confession and sort of spiritual cleansing, the idea of having to sort of renew yourself in your faith and so on. It's a pretty common religious idea throughout a number of different traditions. But yeah, I don't know, which way that might go. Ultimately, it could be an internal perception about one, again, has done things, or maybe engage in actions that upon reflection, feel they feel sort of sullied by. Or perhaps it could be an assessment of the external world, the idea that everything around me, it's so unfair, it's so brutal, it's so cruel, this is all unclean, this all needs renewal and sort of cleansing. So yeah, I feel like it could go different scales, different directions. It might be none of those things, of course. So, and indeed, as I listened to, a very fast and sort of intense and kinetic punk rock tune for the first time, it's not always easy to pick up on all the lyrics. So, yeah, like I said, as I go through this album, I will continue to re-listen, and over time, I will come to sort of a more clear understanding of what some of these songs are about. But ultimately, I have noticed that first time through, a lot of them are kind of visceral experiences where I'm not necessarily catching every line. But again, their musicianship and precision, and sort of their ability to sort of change tempos, quickly come to a stop and then restart in perfect synchronicity. It is really impressive. So in any case, let's get this one. It is Unclean, and it is from the 1994 album Another Day in Paradise. Fat Mike is in effect. Subhuman religious wars kind of thing. Yep. Fuck yeah. Oh!
one of the favorite punk rock songs I've ever heard.
Yeah, my favorite one by them, like overall, like not just like going on this deep dive, but even the two tunes that I remember and really enjoy from Twisted by Design, Too Close to See, and I think Matchbook. That's the best tune from them I've ever heard. And if I heard that in '94, which is like basically when I was discovering punk rock, again, I discovered Propagandhi in like spring of '94, like a few months after they put out their first album. And if you don't know, their sort of worldview and a lot of their songs on their opening album kind of have that same attitude toward these large like systems, whether religious or political, that basically use humans who like have feelings and families and sort of aspirations and sort of comforts and so on, and just send them into the sort of meat grinder and just use them as cannon fodder to achieve their aims and try to get more land or get more people to believe what they believe. And that's what it felt like that song was about, the idea that sort of whether it's a religious system or perhaps political systems. I think it was maybe more focused on the former, but that like because there's so many sort of leaders that encourage the followers to sort of behave in that way, ultimately the sort of writing on the wall is doom. It's people blowing each other up to try to get each other to believe the things that they think other people should believe, and the whole world suffers for it. So yeah, sonically, I mean the vocals, like especially not by the end, like just going off. Yeah, I'm stunned. That's like one of the best punk rock tunes I've experienced. Certainly, like in this deep dive, in the sense that like a lot of these punk rock tunes I'm reacting to, I compared it to Subhuman's Religious Wars, which if you haven't heard that, go check out that tune, whether like in my reaction or just the actual tune. But yeah, it's number one, I feel like it's a very similar song, and number two, I enjoy like the visceral nature of it, but it also sort of it speaks to sort of attitudes and sort of philosophies that I was beginning to think about in the early '90s. So like I said, if I had heard this at the time I was getting into punk rock, I would have been like, oh my god, this is now going to be one of my favorite bands. So yeah, it's funny how that works. But like I said, big shout out to Paulie, because already this deep dive is beyond what I thought it might be. So yeah, fantastic tune. Let me know what you think, and we'll see you next time. Peace.